Hello and welcome to another episode of the Captain's Table podcast. My name is Paul, Berserker1, Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender at TheAstroPub, space professor at the Astro Historian, and your moderator here on the Captain's Table podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Star Citizen. We've been around for many years, and we do now have a brand new location where you can find us, which is youtube.com/at the Captain's Table podcast, which is where all of these recorded videos will be living from the beginning of the new year on. So if you're watching this live, make sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel. And if you're watching this recorded, make sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel. I'll have the links down below. But again, that is youtube.com/at the Captain's Table podcast. Let's start off by introductions, because the topic for today is 4.0, sort of a broad look at 4.0 now that it has been in testing. But before we get started, let's start off with Nightcob. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? And where can they find you?
Oh, man, you had to start with me. All right. So I'm Nightcob. You can find me on Twitch or YouTube. Please don't go there and follow me after this video. I so rarely do content these days. I went back to life on the submarine, not on shore duty anymore, so it compromises my ability to stream with any kind of frequency. But occasionally I like to do podcasts, and you should go follow Tree0311 or Atira Kel. I do the Armchair Admirals and Generals podcast with both of them. Recently just did the AA and G with Tree, and I did the whole Polaris tour
Nice.
from the perspective of a submariner.
I got you in trouble for that one last time.
Well, he got me in trouble for it this time. I did not expect that many views on his videos, and I did not expect a lot of my coworkers who are also nerds to be like, "Saw you in another one of those nerd podcasts again." And I was like, "Yeah, that was me."
To any of you in the silent servers who are watching this, please don't give Nightcob too much shit.
That's fine. That's what we do. So I'm getting used to it. But yeah, so follow those guys. You can find me there. And then occasionally I just stalk other people's streams and stuff like that. So, and I come here every once in a while. Follow Paul.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you please plug Tree and Armchair Generals and also I'll plug that as well. If you are a member of the Star Citizen community, especially if you make content for Star Citizen, and you are also a active or retired member of the military, reach out to Tree. They love that sort of thing. And also, I guess the soldier's perspective is Atira's just like normal channel. He doesn't do it like with other people, right?
No, that's just Atira doing his YouTube videos of soldier's opinion on things Star Citizen and all that.
So, but yeah, so reach out. It's a fun time. A lot of that sort of camaraderie. And I know there's a lot of veterans in the Star Citizen community. So
yeah, we like space games. It's weird.
It makes sense. The one thing that is always universal is that people like cool stuff, and the one thing about the military is that there's a lot of cool stuff in the military. A lot of cool like gear and stuff and boats and planes and equipment that all looks cool, and it's supposed to be cool. So if you're already kind of in that mindset, looking at cool spaceships kind of is a natural progression in my mind. But
it's fair.
Yeah. Griffin, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
My name is Griffin Gaming RPG. I'm one of the producers of the Soul Citizens. We do live streams on Sundays. It's our main show at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we do another show called Soul Talk on Thursdays, which is at 9 p.m. Eastern. And we just finished up our third show, which is called Soul Voices on Saturdays, and that's at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And been out here a supporter of Paul for many, many years, been a friend of his, even better that I'm his friend. I can't tell you how many times I've watched him walk around with a helmet and get signatures at Citizen Cons. But I'm always happy to be able to spend some time with him. He's one of the OGs out here, and I respect him and respect all that he's been doing for our community for many, many years. So I'm happy to be here as always.
Yeah. Griff and I have, I think, every single time I've been to a Star Citizen event with large numbers of people, Griff has always been there. So it's always been like, if there's an event in Star Citizen in the United States that's big enough, Griff and I will both be there. You will see both of us there at some point. That is my personal mark of if it's a big event is if Griffin's there. If Griffin's there, then yeah, it's a big event.
I don't know about all that, but okay. It sounds good. It sounds good.
You just have an eye for events. That's what I'm trying to say. Which
you got to grow up like me and be retired. Then your life will change, my friend. So you'll be going to these things a lot more too. Nothing else to do. So
all right, yeah. So as I said, we're going to be talking about 4.0. My brain's already skipped 4.0. 4.0 in terms of what is it? What is it now? What will it be in 3 months? And what will it be in kind of a year from now as a patch in its importance? Before we get started, I'm going to read through the patch notes really quickly because while there is a lot, there are 16 entries currently. Mm-hmm. Those 16 entries, a lot of them can be summarized as just locations. So, for instance, the locations entry, or not 16 in the locations alone, plus 2 entries in core tech and 2 in gameplay. So, 20 entries total.
And 1 in AI.
Oh, there is 1 in AI.
You're
yeah.
quasi. You're quasi grazer.
The boy, the chonky lad, the goodest boy. So with the locations, it is the biggest one is all the planets of Pyro and all the moons of Pyro. Pyro 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the moons, which are Ignis, Valur, Fuego, Pharaoh, Adir, and Vatra. All those moons are around Pyro, I want to say 4. Which is or 5, which is the gas giant, and then Pyro 4 itself is around the gas giant as well. After other than that, there's also the outposts colonialism style, the Pyro space stations, the contested zones inside those stations, and the asteroid bases. And then after that, we have the AI, which is obviously the quasi-grazer. And then we've got gameplay, the new missions, which is location repair and jump points. And then Core Tech has server meshing version 1 and server mission system refactor. So that is what's in 4.0. As of this recording, the vast majority of that has been committed. When CIG does a commit, it means that it's like 80 to 90%. It's going to come in the next patch. And as of this recording, CIG has yet to delay 4.0. So with 2 weeks left in the year for CIG's typical kind of functioning, their typical operations hours, we're probably going to see it go live in the next 2 weeks. So I figured we'd talk a little bit about 4.0 now at this point. So Griffin, have you had a chance to play 4.0?
I have dabbled in 4.0.
Okay. How is 4.0 now? Right now, as last you played it or last you've heard?
I was in for 2 hours last night after the update came out yesterday, and I'm one of the fortunate ones. The only big hitch that I've run into, which I know a lot of players have run into, has been the first time I went went from the Stanton side. Most recently, the last few patches, I had logged in Pyro, just because the scale of the place is just so huge. And I just said, well, let me start out at Checkmate. I think then the next time I logged in, I didn't go to Obituary. I went to Ruin Station. On both those occasions, I had good experiences, except at Checkmate. This is when there was the issue with not being able to get an elevator leaving your hab. And I saw a lot of complaints about that. People would get out of their hab, but the elevator just did not work. And then I saw people also saying that they would make it to the spaceport and the elevators didn't work there. Those were 2 of the big complaints that I saw. But I noticed the LOD in it. Of course, when you first arrive, everything's loading in and, frame rates are funky. And even though the server frame rate for me at one point was as low as 6 to 8 and as high as 20, 22, I still had that LOD for the first time coming in where everything's loading in. But once you go in maybe twice, 3 times, things ran much smoother. in space, on the planets, the moons, I had no problems. My biggest performance issues were at the stations. Once I left the station, I seemed to have no performance issues at all. I had maybe 2 times I crashed when I was out in space. I was approaching a space station once and I crashed. Other than that, there were some LOD issues when going into hangars. Yeah. You would be approaching the hangar and the hangar wasn't there, even though you could see the interiors of the station. But once you crossed that bridge of coming through the door, then everything would pop in. So that wasn't a big deal. But for wave 1, considering it's wave 1, it's wave 1. Yeah. You know, that's post Evocati. So I do know there are other people who just had real problems with it. But for me, I think I was one of the more fortunate ones where I've gone in and had some enjoyable times. I went to Pyro 1, Monox, Bloom, and I went to some stations. I have yet to go to Terminus. And I went to 4. I went to Pyro 4. Okay. That's where I've been so far.
Nightcap, have you had a chance to play 4.0?
Yeah, I dabbled a little bit.
Your experience so far?
You know, similar to Griffin's take on it, it's kind of a crapshoot. You know, depending on what stage you played in and stuff like that. Lately, it's kind of one of those things. Are you going to get lucky? You know, you're playing a little bit of Russian roulette of whether or not you're going to get a really good server, whether you're going to get broken elevators, whether you're going to get, you know, just consistent server crashes and recoveries. So it's kind of all across the board. But then you might get lucky. And you might have a good solid 2-ish. I don't know. 2 is kind of, I don't know. I don't think that's the mean. Maybe like an hour and a half of like solid gameplay. And, you know, you're going to have moments too. Like if you can get out of a station and in a ship and you can go to visit one of the Pyro's planets, like you might get really lucky about what time you get there. The look of the clouds as you're coming down on Bloom. Or you get a really good jump point, you know, and you have that in one of those Star Citizen magic moments where it's like, oh, we're here, guys. You know, we're so close. We're just right at the edge, right at the precipice of this turning a lot of the game around for us and being a big thing. So problem is it's so unstable and it's still so in testing. Yeah. We're close though. I feel like we're close. There you go. Everybody's worried about salt from me. I came in with some positivity to start the day. There you go, guys.
I will heap the salt on it because I've had the gambit of experiences with it. I've had some of the best experiences I've had in Star Citizen to some of the worst experiences I've had in Star Citizen with 4.0. And I always got to keep reminding myself like, yeah, this is Star Citizen. This is like, have I experienced something like this before? Yes. Is it weird? Yes. Is it frustrating? Yes. But will it be fixed tomorrow? Maybe, because that's kind of how it works. My big experience, my big takeaway is that the game feels bigger now, and it's generally a good thing. The game feels more alive with NPCs talking to each other. I've had generally I'd say overall a positive experience knowing that this is an advance and how much of an advance it is. But yeah, elevators are a problem. I have crashed to desktop multiple times for random reasons. Coming through a jump point, you get to the jump point, you crash, or the jump points don't open. Now they fixed some of those issues and it's been getting better. Each patch has gotten a lot better. At least for a little bit, and they're currently doing a soak test, which is where they are just letting it sit in an idle through the weekend, so that people can see what happens to the hybrid service, the back end services, when they're exposed for a long time, when they're let run for a long time. But in general, it's not too bad for wave 1. Now, knowledge that it's going to be released in the next, So for those of you who don't know, CIG goes on break. They go on a extended break for about 2 to 3 weeks, right before Christmas, and then they come back right after New Year's. So my gathering is that CIG will probably go on extended holiday break for most people on the 20th of December. And there may be people working through the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And then the rest of those people will have their breaks. It's not a consistent thing. There are some people who will have their breaks start earlier. Some of them start later. And if they start later, they end later. So like I can imagine QA people working all the way up to Christmas Eve and then going on a break and then coming back later than the people who would normally be there. So it is currently the 7th as of this recording. And that means that there is a total of 14 days left or 13 days left before that time hits. So seeing all the things we've said, CIG still seems to be confirmed on releasing 4.0 this year. And it's not something that they sort of said once and never come in. They've constantly reiterated this. So we've got 13 days before this releases. Is this going to release in a good state with given the amount of time we have left?
Ooh, hold on. Are you soft committing to your prediction is that it releases in the next 13 days?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I just wanted you to make that prediction.
Yes.
Right here.
I do believe it will release in the next 13 days. It still could possibly come out after that. Like CIG could take a look at their last minute and be like, listen, we just need a little bit more time. We'll come back in January and release it. But I don't see them doing that because of a lot of different reasons. For instance, the hotfix system they developed for 3.24, which was clearly designed for 4.0 in mind, the idea that they could find small issues and fix them quickly. It felt like it was developed with 4.0 and obviously further down the line. So they could do a lot of back-end fixes and quick fixes that they could then deploy without having to do full builds. And the fact that they haven't said anything other than we're releasing it in this year, even like within like less than a month away from the end of the year, they're still like, yep, we're still releasing it. So it's like, oh, okay. That's how it is. As someone says, wave 1 and only 13 days left. So if this is the case, how is wave 1 or how is Star Citizen 4.0 going to release? Night Cobb, your opinion.
I'll be honest with you, Paul. I'm kind of betting that they're gonna do exactly what you think they might not do is they're
Delay it?
gonna wait and they're gonna wait until the last minute to delay it because if I think it's a strategy.
Mhm.
If they delay it now, I think they lose testers. I think they lose testers in wave 1. I think a lot of people will be like, why am I doing this? It's not coming out till this year anyway. I'll just pick this back up at the end, next year when it looks closer in or something along those lines. I think there's a little bit of buzz right now on it because everybody's starting to get that sense of like, ooh, is it going to come out? Is it going to come out? Is it going to come out? And I worry it's going to be 318 all over again.
Like come March,
Yeah.
4.0 not out yet.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe part of me doesn't want that. Part of me wants you to be right very much, and I want them to bite the bullet, and I want the dumpster fire to commence sooner rather than later because I don't feel like they fix patches very well in PTU waves anymore because it's all about their scaling. And I know they can do concurrency testing in some ways and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes I feel like what this year proved was sometimes you just got to dump it on live, force us to test it, and then fix it in live. Fix it post. We're gonna, just the age old saying like, we're doing it live, guys. We're doing it live,
we'll fix it.
We'll just fix it post. Like,
show must go on.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're in that mode. Sorry, I'm gonna try and keep the F-bombs out of this.
It's cool. It's been more than 10 minutes. You're good. Yeah. The YouTube the YouTube censor just gave up, 5 minutes ago. The bot got bored and left. So
I can just do it to my heart's content now.
Yeah,
I just go full Navy. I don't have to worry about it.
Yes, you can go full
There's
Navy.
Not a line that I could cross. Well, let's not put it that way.
Okay, there are lines you could cross which are TOS violations. So keep it within the navigational beacons of not getting me banned off of YouTube. But
I'll do my best. But Fastcard is in chat, so
yeah, he's not live with us. That would definitely get me banned off of YouTube.
He hasn't gotten you banned yet, and he said some pretty fucked up shit on your show before. Anyway, yeah. So I think it's going to be. If it does release, I'll tell you my opinion is it's going to be an epic dumpster fire of a wreck makes a lot of people upset,
Mhm.
but it just may be the necessary evil that we've got to live with.
Like setting a broken bone. It's gonna hurt like shit, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to pop that shoulder blade back into socket, Lethal Weapon style, and it's gonna hurt, but it's the only way we're gonna be able to continue the fight. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm
Griffin,
ready to bite.
what do you think?
I'm going to probably split down the middle of you guys. I'm going to try to do a little bit of history on this one. I think the safe thing, at the minimum, CIG does is they'll release to everybody in the PTU. That's the safe thing to do, because that becomes the excuse for anything that's not working, and just keep 323 live and make sure that's working well so people can pick which one they want to push through the holidays in. But the bigger thing is, could they get it to live? Now, one thing that CIG did in the past, you guys will remember this, was to push out a major patch that's broken badly during the holiday season. That is not a good thing for them to do. Even though I get what you're saying about pushing through it, but there's so many people who psychologically, this is not a normal patch. 4.0 isn't. There's a lot of anticipation on this patch, and if people come to it and it doesn't work, and that's all they have during the holidays when they're off, it is not going to be good. So I think that at a minimum, it will go available to everybody in PTU. And if they're able to continue to do the updates that they've been doing, they may be able to get a reasonably playable thing out in live, but that's a stretch. They could do it. They could do it if they keep pushing out updates the way they've been doing it. Pyro's not the issue for me. The issue is stability and the meshing working well. I think that they're running, what is it, running at 380 still in the PT in the P? Is it roughly, is it 450 now?
It's 500.
So they've crept it up. It up, and it looks like that's what they're trying to do, is get that number up to the 500. If they're able to do that and get it stable and people can play, in PTU, definitely, I think they're going to go there. I don't think that we're going to not have it. That's just going to be a lot, because that means that we're not going to see anything until end of January, maybe February. That would be a long time. I don't know. I don't know if that would be good for them right now. But that's my prediction.
Yeah.
At a minimum, PTU, everybody can play it, and the live is, 323 is still out there, and people want to play that, they can do that. That's my minimum. But I would love to see them push it and get it out to live. But that would be a stretch, but I would love to see that happen.
I still think CIG is going to release it this year, because I think one of the things they're planning on doing is, and this is going to sound awful, so don't crucify me for saying it, because it's a matter of if CIG does it. I think what they'll do is they'll have people work over the holidays.
Yep.
Because they haven't.
Agreed.
They've done it before.
Yes, they have.
They do take volunteers usually. It's usually like, hey, you volunteer. But this is also CIG with 1,500 employees, not CIG with 400, or like 150. So I think some people are going to be voluntold to work over the holidays. And it sucks.
Yeah, but they're going to get paid for it.
Yeah, they're going to get paid for it. They may get paid time off, but
Yep.
So I'll address that here in a moment, fast car, after we talk about this. But so I do think it will release rough. I don't actually. 318 is still in my brain, and the one thing that I've learned from 318 and from everything since 318 is that CIG doesn't have proper concurrency testing, as Nightcob was saying. It just, for some reason, whatever reason, you release it live, and more things are going to pop up because of the volume of people who play on live compared to PTU that just don't happen on PTU. Because if everyone remembers, 318 was really smooth in PTU. It was really played really well.
It was.
And then it released, and everything went wrong. And so while I don't expect 4.0 to be 318 levels of bad, I'm of the opinion that no matter when CIG releases 4.0, it is always going to be bad, because that it is such an anticipated patch that people are going to come back from the dark ages to play 4.0. There'll be people who have never heard of Star Citizen, or who backed in 2012 and are like, oh, the new system is coming out for Star Citizen, I'm going to jump in. it will be big in terms of its release just because of its major milestone. And that alone is going to break it. So if that is the case, if it's going to be bad no matter what they do, the question is, does CIG just rip the Band-Aid off and just go for it? I still think they do it because that hotfix system that they developed, and they're just going to have people work over the holidays or work remotely to try to find the problems and patch it. So, and then within, I have enough faith in CIG to say within maybe 2 or 3 hot fixes, and then maybe the 4.0.1 patch, which will probably be sometime in late January, will make the game what it should have been at launch. But with so many new things in there, there's going to cause problems. What makes me hopeful is that all of the problems that we have outside of, say, the jump point issues, because it's a brand new thing, all the problems I've experienced in Wave 1 so far, and you feel free to disagree or chime in as well if you've seen this as well. All of them are issues we already have in live. Elevators not working, viz areas being buggy, quantum drives doing weird things, blowing up randomly when you try to approach a planet. Like, these sorts of issues are things we have in 3.
They're not new.
They're not new. And they're also not consistent. So it's not everyone can't get out of their hangar or whatever. It's
right.
You roll the dice, and that's kind of what we have now. So if CIG can figure out how to mitigate those issues, either through a patch or by lowering the number of people, or however they've managed to fix it, because I don't think the server meshing has not felt like the problem. Like the mesh itself hasn't felt the problem.
Mm-hmm. So
it's not a fundamental technology issue. It's just a quality of life issue at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So with their confidence, and again, CIG is frequently overconfident in everything they do, but with their confidence, they seem to be on a track where they feel like they could release a 4.0 in a good state. But that's the immediate problem with 4.0. So let's talk about more once 4.0 is released and it's had some time to settle, what is 4.0 in terms of like for people, like not the near term in terms of people saying like, oh, well, I want to play the game. What does 4.0 represent for CIG in the 3-month period, beginning of 2025? What does 4.0 do for the game, or what does the game look like with 4.0 now out? I'll start with you on this one, Griffin.
Yeah, there's some things that they've already started implementing while we've been in this transition. One of them has been the economy team, which we've been hearing about for quite a while. Has just started stepping up. We were talking about this on our show this afternoon, starting to introduce a more realistic economy. We've kind of had the monopoly money economy for a while, where numbers just didn't match up to what was being done in the game. I know there's some posts out there right now in relation to the recent increases on missiles and torpedoes, but there's also been the aspect of missions paying out in greater numbers now. So I'm hoping that we start to see more reality in that area. The fact that CIG spent time during the IAE shows to focus in on ships, and particularly, I think it was episode 2, talking about what it meant for multiplayer gameplay and capital ship gameplay, that they'll start fleshing that out more for players as well, especially with us going into Pyro. And for me, for those of us who were around back in the day when 3.0 came out, even though there are game features and content that some people were a little upset about that didn't get implemented, life support, fire suppression, the engineering, I think that those things aren't going to be far behind once we've just got the stability for 4.0. So there are some great gameplay things that will expand the game further. My concern is some of the voices that I've been hearing that they don't either understand or were unaware that some of the changes that CIG is bringing in were changes that were part of the original plan. They think that the game is changing or that something is CIG's changing their mind on things when the reality is that these were things that were supposed to be implemented in time, and we're starting to see those things pop in now. So I'm kind of hoping that that transition into what 4.0 is. It's not just about new game features or mechanics, but there's moving toward the vision of what Star Citizen is supposed to be. Starts to become more of a reality for all of us. We're all going to be doing some adjusting in this new thing that we're doing. It's not just about getting new real estate, but it's getting closer to what Chris Roberts wants this game to be. And there's been a lot of pushback on that because some people don't know. Just something as simple as the combat issue of him wanting tighter combat. It may not be realistic for some people. It may seem crazy, but that's the thing that they've always talked about. And, it's not new news for those of us who've been around for a while. And I know the game hasn't played that way, but we are making steps to move toward what Chris talked about years ago. And I'm hoping everybody will, they'll get used to it and say it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be, but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Nightcap, three months down the road, what does 4.0 look like in the immediate beginning of 2025?
I think it looks like the next significant layer of foundation for what the game is eventually destined to become. You mentioned the economy team, and it's not even just like the recent changes with missile prices and stuff like that. There's so many more commodities and minables in 4.0. Like they're really starting to lay some baselines of like, hey, this is what the game's going to start to really become in terms of, honestly, it's what we've all been craving for years, where it's like, oh my God, now there's one system that has commodities that the other doesn't. And now you can actually start to build on some of the fundamentals of traveling from one system to the other, the economic impact of that, the economic impact of good scarcity in a system designed to have good scarcity, or at least certain kinds of good scarcity. So drugs, not very scarce in Pyro, drugs scarce in Stanton. So now there's a whole new economic balance of I go get the drugs from Pyro, and then I try and make it back to Stanton with my drugs, and then I sell those drugs for excessive profits. And and it just boils down to like every little game loop too. I'm looking forward to one day, God, I hope soon, the bounty gameplay of, hey, I can do a bounty in Stanton, and it's medium difficulty level, and pay is okay. Or I can go to Pyro and risk it all to bring back a criminal and take them from Pyro into Stanton to, get, which that's obviously theory crafting. But I feel like they're really laying the framework of design for all of these things that we wanted for so long, or that we've always said out loud or theory crafted our heads of, well, just once, another system comes online and server meshing is starting to function, these are the things that will be possible. And I think we're actually going to start to see the foundations of that. I think that's what 4.0 looks like in 3 months, when stability is enough that all of us get to start to experience and legitimately explore these things that some people have already discovered in 4.0. Like some people are already tracking the prices of commodities in Pyro versus Stanton and are logging. This is like, oh my God, pirate runs from here to here, stuff like that. And not only that, but like the other big foundational things like, hey, military grade components coming out of the shops, like more good scarcity. So I think there's a lot of value in 4.0. Side note, isn't it just crazy? I had a moment of clarity when you guys were talking that like we're talking about the biggest concern of just stability. And Paul, you mentioned it. It's like it's mainly bugs that we already deal with. It's not like anything super new or super specific to server meshing and jump points. And we are just on the cusp. I mean, a lot of people are already playing it already, but we're on the cusp of that. That is widely
just
able to be consumed. Yeah, it's just a fucking thing now. And it's like, and we're just all okay with it. And it's not like a huge deal to us anymore. Yeah. And not only that, but we're at the point now where we're like, only 500?
Yeah.
Only 500 guys. Can we do better?
Up. Yeah.
Let's get them up, man. But I mean, we're jumping from system to system, and now the newness is already worn off, and we're talking about just what is 4.0 going to be the success it needs to be, instead of, oh my God, is it actually even a moderate success? Right now, it feels like it.
Yeah.
It might be soon, depending on how it gets implemented and stuff like that. But shit, now we're really just starting to focus, well, is the gameplay going to really be cool attached to these giant technical hurdles that they have technically already overcome? Maybe just not quite to the scale we were looking for, but soon.
Yeah, I think
soon.
that's my big takeaway about what 4.0 is going to be in the near future is just it's less about what the game will become, what will the game be, and more this is the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear that they have been waiting for this technology to be implemented so that they could actually finally start to do the thing that they were hired to do, which was build a video game. So a lot of people, like I was hearing a lot of people talk with some of the CIG developers at CitizenCon, and the big takeaway that I got from most of those discussions was the teams that deal with gameplay have been waiting for server meshing to be implemented so they could actually do the things they want to do. Like one of the things that was mentioned by Elliot was the Valakar mission is sooner than people think. People are like, oh, it's going to be in a year. I think because they were playing it in engine, in game, they were doing it, live effectively. I think the Valakar mission's coming out early next year. Maybe not March, but like between March and June, for instance. And I could see more missions like that iterating pretty quickly. New creatures coming out for more of these sorts of monster hunting type missions. Because once they have the framework, it's just a matter of plugging in creature. Different versions of the Valakar is just a different model. And if they can model it properly, then you can just change the acid spitting or the rock spitting from being it's spitting out rocks at you. Now it's spitting acid or, fire or whatever, and I think what we see, at least in the first 3 months, is a moderate increase in CIG's game direction, where we're going to see economy is going to change. And Dell actually linked an interesting thread from Reddit on talking about the rework. There is over 100 commodities now in 4.0. And with the best trade routes are going to Pyro, buying something in Pyro cheap, coming to Stanton and selling it for expensive, buying something cheap in Stanton, going to Pyro and selling it for expense. Like it's a 40% increase in profits, or revenue across the board for all commodities. But now you have to take that risk of going through the jump point and all these other things like that. And yeah, so just in general, things are getting better. And I think once CIG has stepped over, maybe stumbled over the initial release of 4.0, we will see an improvement long-term when it comes to the stability of the game and to the gameplay itself. And I think it's likely not going to be super exciting, but it'll probably be a little bit. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. One of my bold predictions, which is going to blow up in my face. I think the vast majority of players in June of this year will find a rhythm in the game where they're playing it like a game more than they have in the past. Finding their niche, finding their, because right now your typical player plays for, 3 to 4 hours, maybe once a week, maybe once a month, maybe even just when the new patch comes out. And then, they stop. They wait for the next patch. I think you'll see more people playing it on a regular basis as a routine, either through trading or salvage or mining or piracy or bounty hunting, whatever. I think June we'll start to see, you'll see people kind of sit there and realize, oh, I'm playing this game. Like just sort of you log on and you play. It's not you log on and the server is eating you and your ship won't spawn. That still will happen because it's Star Citizen, but I think the vast majority of the time you will log on, get to a place, play the game, log out. I think we will see by June less of Star Citizen playing you and more of you playing Star Citizen. As I would say, sometimes you play Star Citizen, sometimes Star Citizen plays you. I think that ratio is going to go down a little bit. That's my bold prediction.
We get to be the Dom, and Star Citizen gets to be the sub for a change. I like it.
Yeah. we get to tell it what to do.
That might have been too spicy for me. Sorry, guys.
All right. So that's what it is right now. And I think we're definitely going to see a lot of drama. That's my other prediction. I think we're going to see drama. Drama is never going to leave Star Citizen community. We will drama, but I feel like the drama is going to be around gameplay. Like, did you nerf X ship? Why did you change X commodity? That sort of thing. It's less of a CIG has made $750 million and I can't get out of my hangar. And it's going to be more of a, you know, I just bought my in-game. I just bought my let's go with like Polaris in game, and CIG just has to go and nerf the size 6 guns. God damn it, you know, something like that.
Do you, can I ask a question? Do you think that there will be a cultural shock? We've seen some instances of this. Let's use, for example, insurance, right? Let's use, for example, restocking. We just saw now that when in 4.0, when your ship is destroyed, you get your ship back, but you don't get your torps and missiles. I'm not harping on torps and missiles. I'm just mentioning that because that's been the latest thing that people were talking about. But people have been playing this game for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years a certain way. You know, do you think that there will be enough pushback that people will literally walk away from the game because they'll think that the changes are too drastic because they've been so used to it playing a certain way? Or do you think that they'll adapt to it as it starts to flesh itself out?
You've known me long enough, Griffin. You know my answer for this.
Do you want to hear mine?
Go for it, Night Cobb. I'll say it after yours.
Bye, Felicia. Like, I'm sorry. That's a hot take, I know, but it's one of those things. Is like yes, I think we're already in the culture shock. To be honest with you, I think a lot of people are struggling over some very recent decisions and some publications, and you know, we're losing a lot of people that you know, are like distressed over what do you mean I can't solo my, you know, Corvette or my Javelin style destroyer, you know, or whatever, you know, and they're like, oh my God, you're going to force me to make friends in this MMO. You're going to force me to join an org. You're going to force me to do, you know, look for group. And, you know,
Night Cobb, I'm going to get all of those comments now. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm helping you out, man.
Croncy was crucified for saying even just like half of this. And now everyone's going to be coming in here and be like, Night Cobb has ruined me. He's destroying my dreams. I hate him. CIG's going to fail because don't listen to Night Cobb CIG. You know?
Look, man, I'm just trying to keep it dramatic so you get a lot of views. All right.
Keep it up.
Yeah. Hey, any engagement is good engagement. But I don't think it's to be clear, I don't think it's as extreme as that.
Yeah.
But people are making it out to be that extreme. And yeah, don't be wrong, Del. The drama does fuel me. I love it. I just I can't get enough of it. But the thing is gonna be like, if you're finding out that this is not the game for you because you played it for the last, I'm gonna say 10 years, but let's say 6 or 8 is a better one, probably. And it's moved in a direction that you don't want, then that's cool. Just go. Because some of us are actually like finally getting to the point where it's like, hey, this is the right way to go. I want a game that's strong in multi-crew. I want a game that's gonna punish me for bad decision making. I want a game that's gonna make sense from an insurance standpoint, so that not everybody is like taking, you know, their Carrack out to a bunker, because it just doesn't make sense, and it shouldn't make sense. All right. And I'm fine with them driving decisions that players will make based on things that make sense. And that to me is a lot of the decisions are pointing in that direction. I think it's hard for people to see it, but like even just hey, you can't, when you reload a ship or respawn a ship, you don't get your missile inventory back. I'm thrilled.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to play devil's advocate to your point. And I agree with you, by the way, but I'm going to play devil's advocate. But CIG created that monster. They made the Carrack a cargo ship without the features being on it, right? You see what I'm saying? So if that psyche has been built up over 2, 3, 4 years where I've been able to go out, solo my whatever, and now I can't, you know what I mean? Did CIG create that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, don't be wrong. They're to blame for any of the culture shock there. But it's one of those things like, how are we going to play this though? Like,
yeah, right.
They got two choices. Either they wean us off of, you know, the drug that they've been giving us for the last 6 years of, you know, soloing large ships, or they just force us to go cold turkey. Me personally, I'm ready for cold turkey.
You're ready.
Because I think we've wasted too much time already.
I hear you. Okay.
I'm gonna say the same thing. Basically, I think that I've been worried for years that CIG set up expectations, or they let expectations be set up for them because they were too afraid to set it themselves. They were afraid that if they sat up and said and doused cold water on people's faces, that people would stop opening their wallets. So they did everything they could to just not.
Yes, you're right. You're right. God, you're so right.
So they took the coward's way out and decided to not say anything. And as a result, now, and partially, I'm sure they also self-reflected on it by saying, well, we don't really know yet. We not fully know. It's that sort of like, they didn't want to, I'm sure they knew, because as Disco always says, if we have this conversation outside of them, they probably had that inside, and almost certainly this is what happened. Or at least, in my opinion, it could not happened. Please, CIG employees, if you know this information, tell me if I'm wrong or not. I'd love to not spread misinformation. And so as a result, people came up with their own idea of what Star Citizen was, and they ran with it. And like there's an example. We had somebody who came into my chat who was claiming that CIG explicitly said that the 890 jump could be a soloable combat, a solo combat beast.
Okay.
And pulled out references that they mentioned in the brochures and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, yeah, because it was sort of vague at times, you could have said that, but like, I don't think anyone has ever explicitly said you could completely solo an 890. Yeah, a solo crude combat beast, no less. Yeah, and like those people have been around for a long time, and as a result, because we've in this situation where the game has been a game the way it has been for years, you have constantly people saying CIG just needs to stop adding new things. They need to make this better, and then they can add new things later. And I think that's a symptom of the fact that CIG hasn't iterated enough. People got comfortable with the way the game is now. They got comfortable with their own imaginations of what this was going to be. They did not want to listen to anybody who said anything otherwise. And as a result, they're going to have that shock. And I think we're already in that shock, and we'll be continuing that shock. I've been worried that this sort of change, once the game becomes a game, a lot of people will go, oh, this isn't the game I want. So, and it's definitely on CIG that they didn't nail this down sooner. It's also about setting expectations, because you're your own person, hypothetical person watching. You could have done more research. You could have been more critical. You know, it's not entirely on CIG to tell you everything, because they did also say all of these things we've talked about. All of us have been in the project long enough to know what CIG's vision was. They didn't really sway from that vision. They just never told you when you asked a question. They would say, CIG would say something to the effect of, maybe. You know,
I'll be honest with you. I totally agree with you, Paul. But I would argue the big thing is they didn't communicate it in the most important way. And the most important way to communicate with your player base that things are changing is changing the game.
Yeah,
that they're playing. Because if you do not change the game that they're playing, you can fucking do ISC, you can do SCL, you can do Spectrum posts all fucking day long. That's a crapshoot of whether people follow that stuff or whether they engage with that type of communication. But you can guarantee that if they're part of your player base and they're playing the game, you can sell the vision by how you change the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one of the real problems we're at right now, is now they're actually starting to do that. And people are like, whoa, wait a minute. What the fuck? You know? And that's what happens. But I'm okay with that. Just to be clear, I'm still okay with that. I need them to do it, and I want them to do it faster rather than slower. And that's just really where my head is at. And that's kind of what my point was. It's like, y'all got to start breaking it to us now.
That's my point perspective. Right now, CIG's got a broken limb, and they need to reset that limb, and they need to put a cast on it. And it's gonna suck as shit. You're gonna get a lot of people mad, a lot of people leaving. But like once it's done, it's done. You know, they can't keep doing this footsie with what the game will be anymore. You know, this like
footsie, huh? That's good. I like that analogy.
So does 4.0 does 4.0 begin that now?
Yes.
Is that that's our leap, right?
I think they started that. They started
does.
They started that conversation with the 1.0 presentation at CitizenCon, and everything is going to be building off of that. And you know, at this point, they just got to do it. And I think it's even in CIG's mindset. That's one of the reasons why I think 4.0 is going to release the end of this year rather than later, because they just have to do the damn thing. And that's the important part. And you know, I was going to say, because like, how many times have we had a change in how the flight model works? How many different versions of the flight model have we had over the last 12 years? Yeah. I've lost count. Someone probably knows, has a list. It's probably like 12. We probably had enough flight model changes to be like one every year almost. But like, and that's the problem. It's like, it's not necessarily that the flight model changes were bad or good. It's just they constantly change. So you can't like build an audience that says, I like this, I'm going to stick on this. It's just changing for whatever reason, without any reason or an understanding. Like, so yeah, that's kind of my perspective on that whole thing.
Okay.
So the last question I have, and I'll start with you on this one, Nycob. What is 4.0, if, you know, a year on? So December 2025, what does 4.0 look like in terms of like as a patch branch?
Man, trying to decide if I want to be positive or negative with you on this one. Well, maybe I'll blend it. I'll tell you what my fear is, if you want my negative first. My fear is that we're going to get another 2024 situation where we get a major patch, maybe we get one more, and then we get a lot of darkness as they rediscover, you know, or reevaluate where they're headed in a direction and stuff like that. Because I agree with you. I think 6 months in, we're discovering the new game that is 4.0. What I worry is we're discovering it and it's revealing a bunch of other problems. Now that we've gotten this hardcore tech out of the way, I think unless we get, and this is what my fear is, unless we get things like Transit Refactor, you know, they start ripping out old code stuff that is really complicating the way that we play the game, and they legitimately fix those things. If we get stuff like, if we don't get stuff like Quantum Boost, you know, that is supposed to be one of the mile markers that is preventing, you know, master modes from reaching a certain level of fruition. Which I could see. I don't necessarily agree with that point. The crafting one kind of gave me pause, but we could talk about that in a different show. But if we're not seeing some of these other fundamental things that we expected this year, and that would be big difference makers for how we play the game on top of 4.0, man, I worry that 4.0 will get stale, and I worry they'll backslide. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If it gets stale and we start to get frustrated, I worry they'll backslide. But I don't want them to. I want them to keep pushing. And I hope that 4.0 in a year is, you know, not just 4.0 anymore, but like 4.2. And we've got some other big things that are dramatically, because it needs to stay on the dramatic scale.
Yeah.
This year was too slow. This year did not change enough things too quickly, or quickly enough, I should say. And then, you know, 4.0 needs to be that, okay, now, I don't want to say the floodgates because that's a little cliche, but it should be some kind of, you know, the hurdle coming down at least 12 inches in height, you know, where they can start delivering more of the game that we expected and that they've advertised, and that, okay, now that we've gotten these major technical hurdles out of the way, we can start actually doing the things that we've been talking about in a faster fashion. Otherwise, a lot of us are going to have that moment of like, I guess it wasn't the really big hurdle that we all thought it was. And, you know, if it gets stale and less iterative,
yeah,
I don't know. A lot of things are going to come into question.
So it's you think a year on we'll know whether Star Citizen is truly, or CIG is truly opening the floodgates, or is it just the same old shit?
Ooh, can I phrase it a little bit differently? You're so close.
Sure.
I think a year from now, assuming it releases this year, I think a year from now we can start to make an educated guess of whether or not this was the true blocker that they advertised that it was for the last 6 years. Because
Okay.
if we're not seeing a lot of iterative improvements on the game or them delivering the things that have been sometimes vaguely or ambiguously held behind the blocker that is server meshing, and sometimes maybe just implied, or maybe assumed by the community. If we're not seeing a lot of those things come into the game, a lot of us are probably going to have that moment of yikes.
Yeah.
What's the real problem, guys? What's the real blocker?
Griffin,
Is it Squadron 42? I don't know. I'm sorry. Go
answer the
ahead,
question.
Griffin. Jump in there.
No, that's okay. No, Nightcob, I think you kind of went down the road I'm kind of thinking about too. A year from now, boy. I think that there definitely needs to be. You talked about going back and getting all the old code cleaned up, because I've always felt that 4.0 needed to represent that we needed to get all that old code stuff out and get everything up to date, because there's so much stuff was lingering from way back from the old Port Olisar all the way through. So that needed to be done for sure. I also think that some of those things that we've lived with for a long time, like the transit system, like the elevators, those need to start resolving themselves. We've just lived with those ghosts a long time, and I would love to see the fact that people can at least get around in the game and stuff. I've also had the concern. I've raised this question with our community as well: is server meshing the last hurdle? Is there going to be, because before they named like 5 or 6 things that they had to do, but we're at that last one that they've talked about, and they haven't talked about any other technical hurdles beyond static going to dynamic server meshing. Is there another monster afterward that we'll have to worry about? And will that monster be something that makes the game feel unplayable or not desirable to play? Or is it just some new area that they need to venture into, but we can still, gain something from the game and feel comfortable playing it? So I'm with you on those particular points that you mentioned, Cobb. I'm looking at the shift in the game, the shift, not to diminish the solo play aspect of it, but to enhance the cooperative gameplay side of it. Doesn't even have to be multi-crew as much as it is cooperative gameplay. When CIG did that show during the IAE and they talked about the capital ship battle, they started talking about the roles of ships. I think you were mentioning this earlier, Night Cobb, about the fact that certain ships, they've been used outside of role. But if we start looking at what is a light fighter for, what is a heavy fighter for, what is the Ares for, what are the logistical ships in the game for, and that how those all come together to achieve something, whether you're in an org or not. I want to see that type of gameplay start to manifest itself more. And some of that does lean toward multi-crew. Some of it does, but some of it just has more to do with how do you play the game with other people. And I know, Night Cop, I hate to say it, we're going to get Paul in trouble here. Star Citizen is still an MMO. But, it was interesting at CitizenCon, they said that it's a game for solo, PvP, PvE. They tried to say, how do we reach all these different people at the same time? That's a monumental task, so that no matter what type of gameplay style, you can come into the Star Citizen world and find your place. Now, there may be limitations on that. And to me, that just kind of comes with any MMO. I know that there are plenty of dungeons that I couldn't go into by myself and solo through. You just couldn't. And I didn't get mad about it because I couldn't go in and kill the golden dragon by myself. I just couldn't do it. I had to have other people help me to achieve that. I want more game. I played with some people recently who've told me that they always played solo. And when we were doing the, what are they called? The platforms in Orison, they had never done that stuff before. But once they did it, they found out they enjoyed it. They were like, wow, this was, I don't normally do stuff by myself with other people, but I don't normally do PvP or PvE, but I did it. So I'm hoping that this game kind of helps people to kind of give those other areas of gameplay a chance. I know that some people are used to it, and there's nothing wrong with achieving things on your own. There's a great satisfaction of doing something by yourself. I saw a guy once take the A2 in and literally do what's the place where we do the drug thing at that comes around? What's it called? Yeah, he was out there by himself with an A2 and he was soloing it, and I was cracking up laughing. I was like, this guy's got an A2 and he's soloing this area. But that's not what the A2 is supposed to do. I want to see a fully crewed people with bombardiers and people cooperating and doing stuff. That's the type of thing I want to see this game grow into. So I'm hoping that this game matures more into that aspect of what what Chris Roberts has talked about for a long time. I love the idea of people coming together and playing together. But don't get me wrong, I'm not against solo play, but I think it has its place. I think multi-crew has its place. And I just want to see the game grow into stability and growing closer to that vision of the game.
Yeah. There's a lot of conversation in chat about people. One of the things that I saw people point out is that someone said, those people who want multi-crew gameplay don't realize how tedious it is. And the response is, yeah, we do. Anybody who's played a game like Arma or like DCS or anything else like that's what a sim does. Like Star Citizen. Yep. Star Citizen is a planning simulator. It has always been a planning simulator. It has never been anything else other than a planning simulator because it's trying to emulate life, and life requires logistics.
Yeah. and time.
Yeah.
Can I say this real quick?
Can I say something real quick?
Go ahead.
Have you noticed how they've tweaked time in the game? People were so worried about what am I going to do when I'm on my ship? What am I going to do with all this time? And those of us who were around back in the day, remember when you used to go from Port Olisar to Hurston? It took like freaking 15 minutes, and now you're 3 minutes. You're jumping across because Stanton is only so big, 344 AU, whatever it is. Pyro's bigger. They're going to adjust times. Remember when you used to wait for the train? You waited literally 5 real minutes in real time. Now you sit there and wait and it's like 30 seconds and the train comes. So they're going to do those tweaks to it to balance it out. And I think people, you got to give room for it. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Give room for these changes and wait and see what they turn out like. And go ahead, Night Cop. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, no. I saw that same quote, and your point's super valid as well. But my challenge to that is like, look, the planning thing, whether or not it's too tedious, I think it's a gateway. It's a gateway, and I like it as a gateway, a hurdle, right, to some of the more epic types of gameplay that you'll find, right? Destiny did this a long time ago with the 6-man raid thing. Like, you want to experience the raid? Okay, cool. The gateway to entry on that is figure out 5 people that you're ready to cooperate with, because it is a team-based sport in that regard. But the most epic moments are going to be generated from that success of overcoming that hurdle and having that type of gameplay. Recent example for me, he was in here chat earlier, but Robin Blitz, who's been on your show recently, Paul. Robin Blitz, he's got a Polaris, put together a party in our org, and it was one of those things like, hey, this is the prep, this is where we're going to be, meet here, and then we're going to get on the Polaris, we're going to go do the Idris fight. And everybody already picked like the sign roles for the most part, and then everybody synced up, and yes, it is tedious to get everybody together, even with some planning. But I got to be honest, the following 2 hours of gameplay were some of the best I've ever had in Star Citizen, fully crewed Polaris. And we got a little lucky, don't get me wrong, that the servers were behaving nicely and stuff like that. We didn't have a lot of bugs. But even still, like, I walked away from that session of Star Citizen, 3 hours in Star Citizen on a Sunday, and I was like, man, those are the moments you chase.
Yeah.
Those are the moments you chase in this game where you're like, no other game has given me experiences like that. And yes, it cost me a lot in the beginning, but man, price well paid. Like or what's the line from Equilibrium? I pay it gladly. I can't do it good. What's his name?
I know what you're talking about. He played John Connor in the that one. Played Batman. Wasn't it what you're talking about?
Well, no, it wasn't Christian Bale's line. It was his mentors as he's sitting there, and Christian Bale then just executed him in the face.
Oh, yeah.
But he was, a heavy price. I pay it gladly. That's the line from Equilibrium. But yeah, I can never remember. He was the bad guy in Patriot Games.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
It'll
about.
come to me later.
Oh, my wife loves him. He's the guy who dies a lot.
He does die a lot.
Yeah, Sean Bean.
Sean Bean?
Yeah,
Sean Bean. Yeah, Sean Bean. Paul, we got to get together to talk movies.
We do.
Sometime.
We'll do it at the end of this year or beginning of next year when Star Citizen's dead. We'll do a special Captain's Table where it's just us talking movies.
I'm fucking down.
Yeah,
down.
Fun fact, by the way, this is Chris Roberts' thing that I always like to bring up. For those of you in chat, did you know that Chris Roberts actually is technically the originator of the Matrix style bullet time technique?
Yes. That's right.
He beat the Wachowskis to theaters by like 6 weeks. So the scene.
Oh yeah,
in Wing Commander, when they do the jump,
you're right.
when they do the jump,
do the hyperspace jump,
and they like the whole like spins around thing, like it's like, oh, they're copying Matrix. No, they're technically in the same production at the same time. They were using the same technology. My theory is that because Chris has always been a tech nut, he heard about it and decided to incorporate it into the film because he wanted to use the most latest technology that he could find, and so yeah, doing that whole thing. So that's a fun little story about how Chris Roberts technically beat the Wachowskis to the bullet time effect, to the surround bullet time effect, slow-mo bullet time effect by 6 weeks, something like that. So yeah. I will finish this off by saying I think a year from Star Citizen is we've been in put up or shut up in the last couple of months, and I think I think that is really the put up or shut up moment is a year from now.
Yep.
Will server meshing be the be all and end all? And some people have also brought up things like, oh, well, server meshing is not the end. It's like, yeah, but the thing about the server meshing being a blocker is the difference between server meshing as we have it with 1.4.0 versus whatever future versions we're going to have is more about how you allocate those, where those out servers go, not how they interact with the game, but where do they go? That's really what dynamic meshing is all about, is where they go. And the CIG's development team seemed to be very confident that they almost wanted to just do away with static whatsoever and just go straight to dynamic because they felt that they could do it quicker, in fact, or fairly short, in a fairly short amount of time. So, and of course, CIG is overconfident typically, so we could always keep that in mind. But with that being said, all of the developers and the way they talked about Star Citizen with all this technology in is that they've been waiting for server meshing to come in so they can do the things they want to do. So the hope is that was the last blocker, because server meshing has always been the game. It has always been the main focus of the game. Everything that was developed has been developed for server meshing, from the 64-bit floating precision, OCS, object container streaming, the backend services, the hybrid service fixes. All of these things have been designed specifically for server meshing. All the way back in 2012, that was always the initial goal. They didn't know exactly how it looked like, but you know. But I also I'm gonna be optimistic and say I think in a year from now, Star Citizen will look more like the game it will be in 1.0 for the first time. Like, we're going to see the changes early next year, but by the end of next year, we will be confident. I think they will have at least one other system out. I think Nyx comes out before the end of next year as well.
Holy shit! You're just fucking dropping predictions like that. Oh my god!
I think I've based off of where they are currently in terms of development, and knowing that Nyx is just Levski, and they already have half of what, like, they're just going to reuse the assets they had from Levski and add some new things here or there. Like, they can do we know they've done a landing zone in like 6 months. They can do, and they've been working on Levski, so it's like they can do Levski in the next 6 months. And everything else is just particle effects and planets, and they've done that forever. So it's just a matter of, like, can they get the missions to function right, the factions function right, and that's all being done, tested in Pyro. There's no technical reason they shouldn't be able to have Nyx out by the end of next year, other than just time, and they've got a year. So,
God, I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
So, like, yeah. So I think part of that is also going to be people starting to understand the balance, and I hope CIG understands the balance between solo players, multi-crew, and large group play. Because I also think that CIG has been sort of crafting this, and I think by the end of next year, 4.0 will really start to show here's what you can do as a solo player. Here are the things you can solo, but it's suggested you do like the sweet spot that CIG has been shooting for, which is like 1 to 6 people. And then the large group fleet gameplay, which is like the Polaris and up, where you have like a Polaris and a bunch of support ships and all those sorts of things, and those sorts of, kill the Idris type events from Save Stanton, Phase 3 Save Stanton, that sort of event where you'll start seeing those things come up. Or
You're right.
Say. Yeah, no, I just saw someone said, Paul, they just need time to build, complete, and build content. I mean, that's the case. Like, there's no technical reason, is what I was trying to say. There's no, like, the reason why Pyro took so long was because they didn't have server meshing. When server meshing's out, expand the servers. That's about it. So, but yeah, I think I'm going to be optimistic and say it'll be, we will probably not have a lot of folks who are watching this stream right now live playing the game, because some people will hit that point of being like, not the game I signed up for. I'm going to walk away from it, you know. But I do think we'll see new people. We'll see hopefully more information about Squadron, so we start to get some of that trickle of excitement from the Squadron side of things. So people who don't know about Star Citizen but know about Squadron, finding out about Star Citizen, and you know, that sort of thing, that process. So yeah, I think 4.0 in a year is going to be I'm going to be overdosing on hoping. I'm going to say it's going to feel like a game that we've wanted to play for a long time. I think most of us are. So all right, I think that's a good discussion. It's good, almost an hour and 10 minutes. So make sure you, we're going to move over to the question and answer session. If you want to ask questions, I mean, we obviously want to talk about things like the economy changes and the changes for things like the torpedoes and missile changes. We all, before the show, we were talking about a lot of this stuff. So if you want to ask those questions, feel free to ask those in chat. There's a new way of asking questions, which is just put a brackets brackets question in chat, and then ask your question. I have a bot that will pull all of those questions into a big pile for you in YouTube and Twitch. So make sure you do that. If you're watching this recorded after the fact, make sure you hit that follow button here on Twitch, subscribe to us on YouTube, and subscribe to our new channel, the Captain's Table Podcast, or so youtube.com/@the Captain's Table Podcast. Subscribe there as well, because that was where all of these recorded videos will be going forward. And make sure you check out Armchair Generals and Admirals, or Armchair Admirals and Generals. I always
do that every time. Yeah. You do that every time. Yeah. Fucking Atira is sitting somewhere laughing about that.
Chuckling.
Yeah. Every fucking time.
On Tree0311 to find Night Cobb. You can also find Night Cobb on my Discord and other Discords. He floats around the verse. And of course, check out Soul Citizens, all of their podcasts, Soul Talks, Soul Voices, and Soul Citizens podcasts, which are all, youtube.com/Soul Citizens, as well as twitch.tv/Soul Citizens. That's Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, right? Or no, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, yep.
Yeah. So,
yep.
If you want to join us live, twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, youtube.com/TheAstroPub live at 4 p.m. Eastern, which is like 9 p.m. British time, CDT. Would love to have you come on, join us, ask your questions live. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.